So currently, this was from 2012 data, I believe. There were 8,706 kids, third graders in Iowa that were not proficient. And those numbers have been pretty consistent. So there really is this urgency for the state to do something differently around literacy so that we can ensure that every single child in Iowa has the ability to have those foundational reading skills so that they can continue to stay engaged in school activities and have better choices in life and beyond in their careers. So just quickly, that the Iowa Reading Research Center was actually established back in 2012 during the legislative session, Senate File 2284. We have had continued appropriations in 2013 and 14. And we really work, our priorities of the center are legislated, and we work really strategically and closely with the Department of Education and the AEA systems, as well as others across the state. So our team, I always like to say, is small but mighty. So on our team, we have myself, we have Dr. Sally Huddle, who's our research assistant. We have Cheryl Cook, who's our literacy consultant, Dr. Sarah McInerney, who is our communication liaison and was the, prior to this, was the interim director of the center, and Donna Wright, who is currently our secretary at the center. So the other interesting thing about the center is that we have this really large, expansive advisory council. And the advisory council is really to help guide the work and inform the folks at the State Department, where we work under the auspices of and are completely yoked to the work around everything legislative around early literacy. So the advisory council is made up of folks from colleges and universities across the state. We have the 3 Regent universities plus 3 smaller private colleges. We have folks from the Department of Education represented on the advisory. We have folks that represent the AEAs as well as LEAs. Work forward. So the clear and defined purpose for the center really is to apply current research for the development and dissemination of best practices around literacy instruction so that every single child in Iowa can achieve reading proficiency. So because I shared that we are legislated, there are really clear things in that legislation that guide our work that have been set forth as priorities, and these are the bulk of them. So some of the priorities were around reading assessments, a statewide data system, interventions and strategies, an intensive summer reading program, professional development, and school community partnerships. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these, but we're going to give you some more in-depth information around the school community partnerships, and that's where our family resources currently reside on our website, as well as talk to you about what is happening around the intensive summer reading program work that the center is currently involved in. So for the reading assessments, the center has actually been pretty fortunate in helping to support these assessments. Last year, 10% of schools in the state were using these assessments. Currently, we have 90% of the school districts in Iowa using the FAST, which stands for Formative Assessment System for Teachers. That is made up of 3 suites of assessments, so it's not one single assessment, but it's a culmination of 3 different assessments. One of them is early reading, which really captures kindergarten through 1st grade. The other assessment it includes is called CBM reading, and those assessments are 1st through 6th grade. And then the 3rd assessment is an online computer adaptive assessment. Development school. Universal at risk for not being proficient in reading by the end of the school. Kids need to additional assistance so that they can get the support they need to be successful. The other assessment question and purpose that these assessments bring are for progress monitoring, and that means that helps answer the question. So for those students that are getting an additional instruction around reading, are they making growth? So are they improving at a rate that we think that they will be successful by the end of the school year? So those are two of the purposes of these assessments, universal screening and progress monitoring. Again, they help answer the question of, for universal screening, who is at risk? And for progress monitoring, it answers the question, are the students improving and getting better in their reading skills? So the other thing that the center has been fortunate to support is the statewide data system. And it's called Iowa TIER, and it stands for Tools for Innovation in Educational Results. And these two, the assessments and the data system, work together in tandem, and lots of times we refer to them as our early warning system for literacy in Iowa. The nice thing about the statewide data system is that it links directly to the student information systems, so it pulls all the students those folks who are administering the assessments have completed the assessment. It automatically stores it, it scores it, it graphs it, and it keeps it located where if I am a principal, I can look at my building, I can look at a grade, I can look at a classroom, I can look at a kid, I can look at subgroups of kids. So it's really, really efficient way for people to use their data. So some of the ways that we have been able to support the system is the past 2 years we have been able to use part of our budget to support the system statewide. We have also assisted with the statewide training for the system. And just this past spring and summer, we actually reached out to all of the colleges and universities that train elementary pre-service teachers in the state, and that's 29 colleges and universities in Iowa. I was actually shocked when I learned that number. It seems like a lot of programs, you know, some are large and some are small, but we had 100% of those colleges and universities participate in the training so that they too could learn about the statewide assessments and statewide database system, because those students that they're training, when they do their practicums or even student teaching, are highly likely to be in schools that are using these assessments. So we're fortunate to have the partnerships of the universities in this as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl, and I'm going to ask Cheryl to talk about the website, which has been refreshed, and we did a relaunch very recently, and she's going to be able to talk to you specifically about some of the features that the website has, and we want to show you a quick video that's on our website, and then we also want to share with you the resources.
Good morning. So it's great to be here. We are very excited about the website. We've recently, as Michelle said, refreshed the website so that our visitors can really get a comprehensive view of the work that we do and what's going on in the state. I think that you're able to see the homepage of the website and some of the items that you will be able to explore. Reading in Iowa is really about Iowa best practices in literacy instruction and intervention, legislation around reading in Iowa, policy and implementation. Under resources, we're able to share an online collection of family resources we're very excited about that have been up for about 2 weeks. So if we click down into the resources section and look at for families and educators, I'd like to share with you some of the searchability and what might be available to visitors on this page. So as you can see, our family resources, which have been reviewed for quality and accessibility, are searchable by entering a keyword or by filtering the resources by skill, and also filtering the resources by age group. And we can also filter the resources by resource type: activities, articles, brochures, and videos. You know, in this way, families can be pretty precise about what they're looking for, families and educators. So let's try it. So if we go ahead and open up skill, we can take a look at what some of the literacy skills that are identified here. When we hover over the little I for information, it kind of just defines the skill. Search, we're able to sort the resources that meet those criteria. If we open up the first one, Alphabet Scoop, it's a good way for us to just kind of see an example of what visitors can find on the website.
Are you able to see the second page that I pulled up?
Yes, we can see the Alphabet Scoop.
Wonderful.
Indira, is there a way that you can click on the video so that people can get a sense of what that might be?
Yeah, it looks like it's loading here.
Okay.
In this case, this particular resource has a video for families to watch that's very informative. Text and information about environmental print and using environmental print with children, as well as activities that families can engage in. visitors to our site can go ahead and search right to the resource without an extensive search. So I'd love to go back to the home page as well. And I want to share some other ideas that you'll find on the website. So when we scroll down to the bottom of the home page, there are ways for our visitors to join the conversation, ways for our visitors to find out what's the latest news around the work of the center, and also to see what's new in Iowa literacy. And we have a couple of videos, one of them that I'd like to share with you now. Highlight the FAST and IDBs, the early warning system, and the Iowa tier that Michelle just spoke about, and what it looks like at a school in Iowa. So I'm going to go ahead and ask if you wouldn't mind clicking on that.
Nearly 1 in 4 Iowa third graders is not proficient in reading, according to state test results. The great news is that our education system is already working in collaboration with the Iowa Reading Research Center to support literacy instruction in schools. This lawmakers adopted legislation that reading proficiency. The Iowa Reading Research, whose first step focused on an early warning system for literacy to help schools identify and intervene with students who are struggling to read. The early warning system provides a focus and collaboration in their schools that they've never experienced before. This is such exciting work, and the Iowa Reading Research Center and area education agencies are critical partners.
It really kind of brought us together in how we are going to assess our kids, and it's really helped open conversations that maybe we were lacking on having because we were so comfortable in what we were doing before.
Most of the buildings that I work in, teachers were very willing and were actually hungry for this data. Having immediate feedback on their students was a relief to them. They felt that then they could go back and make almost immediate adjustments to instruction if needed.
For me, it has helped me
anxiety about moving forward.
It really just helps me build better relationships with the kids and helping them talk about what it is that they are strong at and what it is that they can still practice.
They appreciated the immediate results they received from that system and their ability to use that data to make good instructional decisions for students.
They're really fun, and then your teacher would be able to tell you what you need to work on, and then you can work on that.
With parents, the assessment is very straightforward, so I think it gives a very easy to understand report of how their child is doing in reading.
At first I thought, well, they're preschoolers, I don't know how well they'll do with testing, but they responded really well to it. They came home that day and they said, we took a test in school today, and they thought it was really neat.
The user-friendliness of these assessments, along with the limited amount of time that they take, allows us to accomplish this in a pretty efficient manner.
It can help you pull together some of your other initiatives in your building and provide you with good information to help students.
It kind of helps bring everyone together on the same page because they are all our kids. It doesn't matter how much experience you've had teaching compared to another teacher.
Together, let's make sure all students have the skills they need to succeed, starting with the ability to read.
Thank you, Indira. So that gives you an idea of some of the available, and then there's also one about the colleges and universities talking about the training. We won't look at that one, but that's what the other video speaks to. And then if you want to scroll up to those three boxes in the middle of our homepage, so if we can see not the videos, but there we go. So this is where folks can kind of tune in and hook into the information that we are sharing. And some of it is our Twitter feed on the right in green, and then we have Facebook, and then we also have a blog. And so it's a really great way for you guys to kind of stay connected. This is where we will be pushing out and sharing a lot of new information that people can go to. Other things that we do support on the website is that we also have letters that schools use to share with families around the assessments. And we have also just recently developed letters that will be disseminated that schools will be sending home to parents after the winter benchmarking for any students that appear to be at risk. Improvements as we go along the way. I think it'll never be done. It will always be a work in progress, but it really does help to get people's thoughts and feedback on that. So if we want to move back to the PowerPoint, and this is how the Reading in Iowa resources and research, and there was the video that we watched. Those resources that are available for families. One of the things that I do want to share is that, and then I'll have Cheryl talk about some additional things that you can look forward to on these resources, is that we did work very thoughtfully with a national expert, Joan Walker at Pace University, helped us develop the criteria that we actually use to review the resources. And so we worked with literacy consultants across the state as well as parents, and every single resource that is shared on our website has been reviewed by at least 3 people. one parent and 2 literacy consultants. And we started out with, I think, over 500 resources. And through that vetting process, we actually are only sharing about half of the information that we first pulled together, because we really wanted to make sure that it was of high quality for folks. So we've kind of worked in a lot of the heavy lifting, and hopefully we'll be sharing just kind of the best resources out there. And then I'm going to ask, turn it over to Cheryl and ask her to share about some of the additional things that will be coming connected to those family resources.
Right. So if we can talk about the things that can be really very helpful and that will end up as advanced search features might be language and resources in multiple language for our English language learners and their families, as well as alignment with the Iowa Core. So as we move forward, we want to be able to make those resources searchable by more criteria in an advanced search feature such as language or Iowa Core. We're also looking at mobile applications because, you know, this is how folks interface with the internet now. And so we want to be sure and add mobile applications, resources for families and educators to use with students that can be used on mobile devices such as iPads and smartphones and Kindles. So that's some exciting sort of a path that we're taking over the next few months.
And we will be sharing those as those come out. One of the things that was interesting is that we started looking at the research and talking with some other national experts around the feasibility of families actually having mobile devices and what type of technology is available in most households. And while it is true that you may not see a computer, it is more and more true these days that there will at least be a smartphone or an iPad. And so we really felt that it was an investment worth investigating for folks, because there are a ton of literacy apps available for folks. Answer any questions that you have about the website or the resources, is I wanted to just touch base real quickly about the Intensive Summer Reading Program. So one of the legislative charges for the center that we have been fortunate to have, I think, is that we are going to be establishing the criteria and guidelines that every school in the state of Iowa by 2017 must use for those students who are not proficient by the end of 3rd grade. Those are students that would be determined to have a substantial deficiency, and that is defined by either not being proficient on a these would on the winter benchmark and the spring benchmark. And the reason why that's really important is that those two pieces of data really give us a good indication of whether students are on track to be successful in the field and in the area of reading and literacy. So one of the things that the center is trying really hard to do is to really be thoughtful about this work and give schools some really good information. So regardless of the implications around retention happening in 2017, we know that providing and supporting families and students with really good summer programming is just a really good idea. So we're really looking at this as an opportunity to develop some guidelines and criteria that will be most helpful for folks. Some of the members on this small task team include people from the Iowa Reading Research Center, but we also have community partners. We have an assistant superintendent. We have reading consultants, an elementary principal. and curriculum director, and this group is charged with making sure this work gets done. So these are some of the things that we are doing around this work. We are actually working with a national expert, and I will share with you that is Jeffrey Borman out of University of Wisconsin, who has done extensive research around summer reading. So he is actually working directly with us and will be helping us draft what those guidelines and criteria might look like to really help inform schools. So not only what it is that schools are going to be required to do, but more importantly, what are some thoughtful practices and guidelines that schools should be thinking about connecting with community partners? You know, what does this look like for communities to come together around summer learning that can really help accelerate students kids during summer, but really helping provide some extensive, intensive interventions so that they can really grow in their literacy skills. So the other thing that this team is doing is that we are actually going around the state and having face-to-face meetings with every single school district and superintendent. We are doing this through the AEAs when they have their superintendent meetings, and what we are doing is we are asking them specific questions about who has summer reading programs that are currently in place, that are experiencing much success, who's using community partners with their summer programming, and also we want to find out from districts, what are your biggest concerns about this legislation that's a survey across the state. We will hope to connect as well as AEAs. A good sense state of Iowa around summer reading programs. So what are those programs that are currently being offered? And in addition to that, we want to try to identify those bright spots that we might be able to learn something from. We know that there's some amazing summer programming currently going on across the state, and we want to be able to highlight some of those and find out some additional information that really might help inform the work of this group around the guidelines and criteria. In addition to that, once we have established a draft of those guidelines and criteria, we will be meeting with a larger stakeholder vetting group that will represent multiple people across the state, and we will be working with that group to get input and go through many iterations of those guidelines and criteria before we have our final dissemination. The goal for this group is that they want this work done this spring. Even though this doesn't have to be in place until 2017, the thought was schools are already offering summer programming, and it would be great if we could get some good information into their hands now rather than later. So we're trying really hard to have this put together by this spring so that we can disseminate this information and continue to have those conversations with schools about how they might think about supporting families and kids over the summer months. So with that, I'm going to just do a quick plug for our wonderful resources on our website and ask you all to join us on Twitter or the blog or Facebook. And this is a direct link to our website. It's iowareadingresearchcenter.org. And at this point, I would really like to pause and ask what particular questions people might have for us that we can help answer around the resources, around summer reading, around any of the work that the center is involved in that we shared today.
Michelle, it looks like we have one question in the chat box, and I think it was referring to the Intensive Summer Reading Program. Correct me if that's not right, Lisa. The question is, can people still join this group? Our 21 CCLC grant includes 30 days of summer programming.
So when you are asking, Lisa, can people still join this group? Are you asking about the vetting group, or what group are you asking to join specifically? The State Department and other folks to try to narrow down who is going to be represented on that vetting group. One of the things that we are doing when we talk to all of the superintendents across the state is we are asking them about which organizations and groups should have representation. And once we will be done with those meetings across the state by the middle of November. Once we are done with that, then we will be reaching out to folks to ask them to be on the vetting group. And I think the first that vetting group needs to be manageable, and so we are probably only going to be asking that 20 people join that vetting group. However, we understand that there's a large interest in this, and we know that there's many more people that can provide feedback and great input. So we are also considering doing some additional webinars and gathering input from a larger constituency group that would represent multiple people across the state that wouldn't necessarily be on that vetting group. So what I can say to you is to stay tuned, and I appreciate you putting in a plug for the 21st century schools for sure. So the question from Dawn is there any guidance at this time on who will need to provide the intensive summer learning programs? Will it have to be schools, or will schools be able to partner with community nonprofits or others to provide it? That is a great question, Dawn, and at this point we haven't narrowed that down, what that looks like. I will tell you that a large charge for this group is to rely heavily on what the research says, while being sensitive to what is going to work for us in Iowa. So we haven't yet made those determinations. The guidelines, in fact, we haven't even gotten to the first draft of the guidelines yet. But I appreciate you bringing that up, because I do think that in order for every school in Iowa to be able to do that, it's probably going to have to look different depending on locations and what access to community partners and libraries and other resources that might be available for communities.
Great, looks like we have somebody else typing.
Yep. Okay, Jenna, she says, I work for a community nonprofit that provides a summer reading program funded by the United Way. Will these guidelines apply to us as well? That is a great question, Jenna. The guidelines actually only apply to schools. And in fact, they don't even apply to non-public schools. This is only, these guidelines and legislation only applies to Iowa public schools.
It's great to see everybody getting involved in the conversation here on the chat box. You can also feel free to, if you're on the conference line, to unmute your line and just go ahead and speak on the conference line too. Either way works well.
We can manage both, I think.
So Michelle, how long did it take to develop these resources, or to pull all the resources together? It looks like you put a lot of, you and your team have put a lot of intensive work into pulling all of these resources together and having them vetted by at least 3 people for each resource.
Yeah, it was a really, I think, thoughtful and well-planned process. It did take a lot of time. So when I think about, it's been over a year since we started it. So we originally worked with a literacy consultant who was gathering the resources, and then we contracted with Joan Walker, our national expert, to help us develop the criteria. And then we had to train those reviewers, and then they had to go through the review, and then we had to look at the data, and then we had to upload it onto our website. So it has been a multiple stage process, but I really think that it's important for us, if we're going to share something publicly and ask people to pay attention to it, that it really has been vetted and is of high quality. So I hope that we can continue to support that kind of work. But yeah, it's taken us at least a year to get through that.
Yeah.
So I want to go, I see some additional questions. So Mary, question is, I assume that the guidelines also apply to situations in which we, United Ways, are partners with public schools and other community entities. So, Mary, when you say that the guidelines will apply to you if you're partnering with a school, what I think I would say is that the schools are going to have some pretty specific criteria that they're going to have to implement. I don't know what that is going to mean with any specificity until we develop that for schools that are also working with community partners. We have had lots of discussion among the group. We have 2 folks who sit on that small task team that represent community partners and have so community partners have a strong voice in this work. And we do understand the value added and the benefits of community partners being part of this. Activities and enrichment for no. Look like for schools. Are from you. Say that that is probably going to be encouraged, but I can't speak to any more specificity until we have those guidelines developed, but that's a great question. So Lisa asked another question, how did the fall screening data look across the state and what percentage were at risk? That is a great question. I don't know if I have that specific information, Lisa, and that would probably be by grade level, right? So we would actually have that information for preschool, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. I can tell you that based on the statewide data, if we just looked at that 3rd grade proficiency on Iowa assessments traditionally in the past, it would be a quarter of the